this tutorial we're going to learn how to do some basic colour grading using some stock footage that we've got, and this is going to be using the Lumetri settings instead of Fast Colour Corrector for those of you who were here last year. So I've just set up a few clips on the timeline, and this is what it looked like after being sort of changed and sort of the kind of feel we're going for. So we're going for a kind of horror feel with it, but if you have a look at the footage that we've already got, it's very sort of bright, there's not really any depth to it. So colour grading is to add sort of depth to your shots to make it sort of match the feel of what you're going for. So for a horror look, you kind of want to make it much darker and add in different sort of colours like greens. So first thing you need to do is go to your colour correction settings and find the Lumetri colour and drag that to your clip. And I'll show you a quick way of doing this in a second. So that's now on here, but obviously it will do nothing. So if you double click it, go to your effects control, and it's all in here, and there's loads of different settings. If you just start off with the basic colour correction, it's probably the easiest way of starting. So in here, you have control over sort of different settings like exposure and things. First thing I would do is try and get the blacks down. So if you just click on there and drag to the left, you'll pull the blacks down. And for this look, let's go down to about -20. You can also change the shadows, so you can pull shadows down. If you knock the blacks back up, it has a slightly different effect. So this just affects the shadowed part of it, not the blacks within the screen. If you want to create sort of highlights, you can just whack the whites up a little bit to create a really bright area. So you can see here, this is much brighter. So from what we had before, which was that, it's a very flat image, we've got kind of a darker, more gloomy look to it. In here is where you can change the colours and things. So if we're going to go for a green look, you want to drag everything over to the green. Now I'm just dragging over the shadows, which actually does quite a good job, but you can also do that to the highlights. If you don't want to do that, you can leave that in the middle. Sorry, that was the midtones. If you want to add to the highlights, you can drag that to a certain way. If you add in green, it just gives that more of a sort of horror look and a horror feel to it. So if you look at what we had before and what we've got now, there's a big difference in the way it looks and feels. And that's how you basically could add in sort of darkness and change it to sort of match that kind of feel. Next clip, you can do one of two things. Now if you're already quite happy with what you had before, if you double click on this clip, go to Effects Control, you can click on there, right click, copy, click on the one you want to, and right click on it, and go to paste, which isn't there, sorry, it's in here. And that instantly adds that in, and then you can go in there and change some of the settings. So if you want to change it even more, you can do. Now this is a shot where it blinks. So you can go in there and change the settings to really add effects to it. So you can pull the blacks really far down, boost the whites, and then it looks like this. The other way of doing any kind of colour grading, if you know that most of your shots match, is using an adjustment layer. So if you go to New Item, an adjustment layer, this should match your sequence settings if you've got that correct. And just click and drag that to the bottom and drag it over everything. I'm just going to remove these two. So the FX button here is to turn it on and off, just so you know. So at the moment your effects layer, your adjustment layer, sorry, is completely empty. If you drag Lumetri to it, you can then do the colour corrections again. Bring the blacks down, and the shadows, pull the whites up a little bit. What that does is it does it to every clip that sits underneath. So you can see when I turn it on and off, all the clips have been adjusted, and that's quite a quick way of doing it. If you're going to reset that, if you know you want to add a green tint to all of that, but you're going to individually do the layers, you can go to your colour wheel and you could just drag your greens over. So now everything is green, but if you go back to here, you can pull that back in. I'm just going to reset this one, let's turn that off. So now the adjustment layer is just affecting the greens, so we turn that on and off. Which means that you've got a green tint through everything. And it just sort of speeds you up. So if there's a section of the film that you know you just want a tint over, add an adjustment layer, put the tint on the adjustment layer, and then just make sure it's dragged all the way across. For if you're doing a music video or something like that, I shot this and it was very flat, but the lighting didn't change at all the way through. This is when adjustment layer is a very powerful tool, which means you don't have to, again, edit each individual clip, which takes a very long time. You just affect the top clip. So again, I'm just going to use the adjustment. Just going to use the adjustment layer with a Lumetri colour on it and drag it on. And when the band asked me to do this, they wanted a specific look. So they wanted it very dark and sort of really dark and pale. Now when we shot it kind of flat and very light. Not the best lighting, and not the greatest room for shooting in, but again, if you just pull the blacks down a little bit, so you're kind of darkening these areas where it's all black. If you want, you can boost the whites a little bit. Again, the shadows. So you've gone from a very flat image to a bit more of a moody sort of image in that kind of way. If you want to change the saturation, make it black and white, or take away some of the colour, you can do. So you've gone from a very flat image to something that looks like that. And again, it affects all the clips. Which means if you are doing a colour grade for something and you want to quicken up how quick speed up how quick you're doing it, just use an adjustment layer. As well as changing your colour, you can also add in features. So again, for this one, they wanted a bit of sort of noise and grain effect over it. So you can just add in a bit of noise to there, and if you just pump it up, so the band wanted a bit of grain over the top of it. Again, if you add it to the adjustment layer, that then puts it all the way through, which you can see. Now I've gone a bit too far with the grain because you can see all of the grain. But again, if there's any effects that you want on a complete sort of scene or an entire music video, just add it to an adjustment layer, not to each one, and it's much simpler, and you know you've got it all.